and super excited to be hosting today's HITEC Live, sponsored by the Expedia Group, and really focus around the idea of charging the powers of our partnerships, achieving success while staying authentic. It is my pleasure to introduce our two speakers today, Monica May and Francisco Scarpito. Let me first start with my introduction of Monica, who is the Director of B2B Marketing and Programs for Expedia Group. Monica is a Texas native who has spent her career building experience in partner management and marketing while making the switch from traditional hardware tech to retail tech to now travel tech. She joined Expedia Group 4.5 years ago and has since launched 3 global initiatives that enable Expedia's B2B partners to grow and scale their business, each with tangible outcomes. Also, our other speaker is Francisco Scarpito, Senior Director, Account Management at Expedia Partner Solutions, B2B Networks of Expedia Group, coming from Argentina and with background on media, IT, and product. Francisco has been working at Expedia Group B2B commercial team since 2015, focusing on unlocking or unleashing the power of Expedia's platform, meaning tech, product, commercial, and operations, and people's expertise into business partners, internal and external. Francisco says, Expedia taught me that business growth and professional and personal development is a consequence, a logical result of the combination of skills and actions. The challenge is to identify those skills, gaps, and actions and link them to a plan, a dynamic one. The strongest muscle to exercise is awareness and intention. Super, super excited to welcome them. So I will start and turn it over to Francisco with a question based on our topic. Francisco, tell us how you have charged the power of partnerships.
Thank you, Omar, and hello, everyone. Do you hear me well? Just checking. Omar, if you hear me well, can you hear me? Perfect. So actually, that's a question. Is something that we are constantly working at Expedia Group. I can answer that just based on 3 facts that we were working the last few years, but it's something that is defining the mission of our company. The first one has to do with diversity. There is something that, especially after 2020, we have see more often, which is the e-commerce habits became much more diverse worldwide, and that responds to a growing demand that is growing faster and faster and faster every year. You can just check any summer in London, in Heathrow, the airport became crazy because of the amount of people going there. Here in the US, we see something similar. We're seeing the revamping on travel in APAC and Latin America, again, because the demand is still healthy and wants to know more about other places. And the third, but last and not less important fact is how distribution had a center place in this travel and tech environment. Now, the thing is, if you combine these 3 things, there's something that you need to start practicing and you need to be aware of, which is how you can capture these 3 facts into the development of a business. And that is a concept that we want to share with you, actually, Monica and I, with everyone here, which is the cultural awareness as a muscle that we must exercise in order to understand where things are going and how we can grow our business. I will let Monica to share with us examples about this. Monica, do you have any example that you would like to share with the audience?
Yeah, sure. And so I just want to kind of key back to what Francisco was saying. He's actually giving a really great example of different cultures within the travel industry that we touch. And I think for all of us, especially with our Latino background, we're able to key on a couple of different cultural nuances and then apply it to our business. So, for example, for one of the functions that I serve, we're across multiple functions of lines of business. And it turns out this was something that, when I first walked into the role was a little surprised about. But going into the travel industry, the culture even is like, it differs not only between regions, but even between like your software partners. So when we're talking about hotel partners or vacation rental partners, it really comes down to each of our segments have a unique scale and they each have a unique perspective. So for vacation rentals, or Verbos, as we like to call it, our company, whether you have five properties locally, your needs as a partner is going to be very, very different than a large conventional lodging or hotel partner that manages 40,000 properties globally. And getting into what we do, and both Francisco and myself with our B2B work, we're often on the ground and talking to these partners and having to lean into our cultural fluency to pivot between, hey, what am I talking to with someone who has 5 properties in like Denver, Colorado, versus a very large multinational partner that the type that Francisco manages. So Francisco, I'll hand it back to you to talk about what your observations as well.
Thank you. And you know, something that I do believe is that we bring a new value in terms of or perspective in terms of communication, because when we are developing our professional career and trying to grow the business, we need to understand, we need to know how to pivot between internal communication and external communication. We always have segments. The example that I have here are actually the consequence of the reason I'm here. I started at Verizon as a graphic designer. I went to Travelocity as an IT and product manager, and then I stepped into Expedia in a commercial role, basically because I was being focused on linking that part that has to do with the technology and what the business needed. So we needed to understand how to communicate that to different segments internally, VP levels, C levels in a company, how to appreciate the diversity in terms of e-commerce opportunity that emerging markets are bringing to our businesses, and always understanding that we need to scale that. So it sounds simple, but it's not. It's something that we are constantly working. That is what I said at the beginning. We are constantly asking ourselves about how this works in our professional world. So I'm bringing here a couple of examples in terms of companies that went through this situation. And again, this is just to connect something that we are talking here with real cases. If Kodak realized that they were not filmmaker producers, they were producers of memories, maybe we should be using a Kodak phone today. MasterCard the same, when they just brought to the table the need to have a differentiator between Visa and American Express. They found that the experience with Priceless was the reason and the focus that they need to follow. Verizon and RIM has different examples, but similar perception in terms of how they understood the importance of a product. Verizon was more focused on the service, not the device, and Apple with the iPhone came and changed that concept. That leads me to RIM, which is BlackBerry, and the same, just the lack of awareness in terms of what was the unique value proposition, how the market was going to perceive that was the reason of what happened with RIM. And Travelocity is the experience that I can share in terms of we had to change internally a lot of concepts so we can start assuming the right things so we can go out and grow in the market. So that brings us to the first stop that Monica will share with you all.
Yes, and I love that example of the RIM BlackBerry. I actually forgot that RIM was the company that had BlackBerries, and we were talking about this a couple of days ago, and I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah. The things that we forget.
I missed the click, by the way, but yeah, that's for
15 years ago. Yeah, and so when we think through these examples, we think about, this is a combination of the cultural awareness, like me as BlackBerry, where's the market heading, and self-awareness and how can I improve. So like there are things that we have to flex between. We listed it here as talking about a superset. So if you're familiar with like going to the gym a lot and you do things in a superset, it's very similar in where we're exercising 2 different types of muscles alternatively. And really the point here is that we want to bridge that as a gap between business or bridge that gap between business and technology with our skills that we bring with our cultural and self-awareness. And so how do we build that muscle, Francisco?
That's a good. I mean, everything starts with being aware of the lack. That is something that I was taught. Actually, I learned this in Expedia. There's a powerful sign in subway in London that is mind the gap. And now every time that I see that is okay, what I'm missing here. And something that we have seen, and Monica please feel free to chime in if you have experience on this, is sometimes we assume a lot of things. Assume it's a risk, but it's something that we need to do. But sometimes if we don't take the proper approach, we might miss the connection between reality and perception, and we might be developing a business or a system or deciding a problem solve that will lead us to a solution that is not answering the needs of the client or the segment or of the company. So how do we work that? Let's move to Monica so we can go deeper on this concept.
And this is actually a really fun example, and this is one of the other half of my team's job. And this is a little bit of insight into the travel industry. Whenever we're traveling and creating new marketing offers for basically anything, a lot of what we have to worry about is how compressed is the market, right? So like how busy is it? How much occupancy are we seeing? How much volume is coming through? And I'll give you two examples of the sponsorships that we have within Expedia, which is what I work in. So I work in directly with our sports sponsorships like Liverpool Football Club, Arsenal Football Clubs, and then also Jazz Fest Music Festival. And what we do is create offers depending on the hotel partners to say, how do you join up with us and how do we incent you to do it? So very different situations. So for Liverpool, everybody wants to go, right? Like they're number 1 and number 2 in the Premier League. We're neck and neck racing. The hotels have zero problem selling their inventory for Liverpool football out in Liverpool. However, Jazz Fest, very different situation. New Orleans is a declining market. Jazz Fest as a festival actually has not had great attendance since the pandemic, and they're just starting to build up again. So we had to actually approach these two sponsorships very differently, in where we had to build a very hefty incentive for our Liverpool sponsorship, but basically had to do nothing but ask partners but to join a sale, to join our Jazz Fest. And so just looking at each market, each culture, each one of those identities that these different festivals and events have, we had to tailor and approach our sponsorships in very different ways. And the wild thing about this is that the teams that were initially creating the value proposition before they handed it to me basically thought oh, we're building a website. There's, if we build it, they will come. Not the case, right? We had to do a lot more heavy lifting in getting into the nuances of each culture before we could really sell the offer. So that was a really interesting aspect, in where we had to get into the partners' persona and their mindset, and understand, as a Liverpool football fan, what do I want to book and what incentives do I want to have as a fan to book into a hotel. So it was fascinating. It was a really great example. And when I think about the two different facets of just one element, so same team doing the exact same work and having to take wildly different approaches, it just kind of shows how you have to navigate things based on your bias, or against your bias is actually a better way to say that.
Oh, that's so good. In my case, I have something similar. This was more related on IT and a product implementation. We had this product that was going to be a game changer for the company that we were working at. This spirit of charging the power of our partners. It was definitely something that we sized it and was what they understood the segment the travelers needed. We implemented and nothing happened. Nothing happened for 1 month, nothing happened for 2 months. We review all the tech implementation. We went through again all the analysis that we have made, and we discovered that the usage of this product was actually out of the scope of all the things that we were supposed to confirm. And we started listening to the traveler. They taught us how they were consuming the product. So we changed things according to what they were doing, and we saw a small increase in the usage and volume until I remember this so clear. We were checking this 5 p.m. Friday, say, hey, maybe we need to use the power of the education that you guys have. This was an OTA, because I really read about OTA. So we tried that. We tried just to tell to the travelers, hey, this is how this should be used. This is a benefit that you have, but it was super, super clear. Nothing, in terms of something super clear. It was super clear, the message, and that changed everything. So the the learning that we had here is that we had an amazing product, we had an amazing implementation. This was perfectly planned, but we're missing something, which is we need to be clear on the intentions that we have with that product. And we need to be sure that the travelers, the segment, the buying persona, the one that is going to consume, understand what we're trying to do here. And that is part of the process. So I think, Monica, what you said is similar from the perspective on how you develop these campaigns. In our case, from the product is how you can fail, learn fast, and be flexible so you can fix that situation quickly. So this is perfect. Now, how do we navigate through these multicultural environments? How we make this muscle more flexible, and how we got more used to this kind of situation? And I'm going to use something that I love, which is art. Art tells us a lot of things that happen in our society, and this is a picture called a perspective from a chart that tells the story of one person. This is where we start. We start about one or project or one implementation or one client or one business that we need to develop, and we build among that information a lot of assumptions that we have. But we need to be aware that any assumption and anything is always limited. At the beginning will be always limited, because it's the first approach that we have, and it's something that, hey, if you fail on that, that's perfect. You need to recognize that fast so you can factor the new information faster. Someone telling me this morning that when I was 4 years old, someone asked me how much was 2 minus 4, which is -2, for me was, no, that is impossible, because I was not aware about negative numbers. Information gives us a lot of new data so we can have a more flexible approach and perspective, so we can adapt our vision and we can quickly understand, as Monica said, hey, we need to understand how we approach this. In my case, we need to understand, we need to educate the traveler to say, hey, this is fantastic, just go and use it. So having the first awareness, which is everything is limited and is dynamic, we need to constantly review what we're assuming, and this flexible perspective will allow us to never lose the big picture and the details. And that is one of the most amazing things that we have been doing with Monica in the B2B world, which is to be aware of the holistic approach and the details, and constantly just going through that with our teams. And of course, our teams helping us in order to unlock this. So Monica, anything that you would like to add on this?
Not really add, but really kind of, it actually really takes us into our next slide, which is giving us our big 3 takeaways. And really, it just, or actually, I think maybe I was wrong on the next slide.
No, it's okay. It's connected. No, it's, yeah. It's a 360.
But yeah, I mean, really, I think this one's one of mine anyways, but really the wrap up there was like, we just, with all of that we're saying, we want to wrap up and make sure that we're saying we don't make assumptions, because that just brings risks to us in what we're doing in our everyday. So really bringing us back together is that multicultural awareness approach to get that 360 approach. Francisco, I think you had this one, right? Yeah. Yeah.
And the key takes away that, and again, I'm going to repeat myself, and Monica, we can share this. You start. Be my guest.
Yeah. So we had basically 3 main points with all of our stories woven in there. But what, first one, of course, cultural self-awareness are muscles that we have to exercise. We bring it together, and we of course, navigate in and out of different, I don't want to say personas is probably the wrong word, but something similar to that. But it enables us to navigate multicultural environments, and that's very key to all of the work that we do, whether it's looking at partners that have different, or that are from different countries, or ones that are wildly different segments. And then, of course, we have to make sure that we're building our 360-degree perspective and coming together with a holistic view. And it sounds simple, and it sounds like something that should be a no-brainer, but it's surprising how focused that we can get into our very narrow. We can very easily fall into a very narrow focus, and it's important to always pull ourselves out and say, hey, let's take a step back. And
it's something that we are constantly practicing, and you know, it's important to be just focused on what we want to achieve. That's all, everyone. So I will open this to Omar.
Yeah, no, appreciate this conversation, and really, you know, we want this to be a dynamic conversation. And so if there are any questions from the audience, please feel free to chime in. You know, I think Monica and Francisco are open to questions and conversations and dialogue so that this can be as interactive and engaging as possible.
Yeah, and I wouldn't limit it to just what we're talking about with building cultural fluency, but also about the company, about our own personal journeys. I think both Francisco and I are, I mean, seasoned is probably the word I'll say today. So we each have our individual paths that we could also answer any questions on.
So there's a question in the chat about the two of you. Are you both US based? But Monica, going on what you said is, you know, maybe if you could, the both of you could share a little bit about your personal background and your journey, what got you here. I know, Francisco, you shared, you know, your history from Argentina to Verizon to eventually that got you to Expedia. But you know, any additional information from the two of you on your personal leadership journey would be, I think, really helpful.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, a little bit of history for me. So I am US based. I was born in Texas, in South Texas. If anyone's familiar with the very border area of the Rio Grande Valley, it's like way deep south. I grew up there, basically went to college at the University of Texas and almost never left. I think I left for about 2 years to go out to the Carolinas. But when that time, I went from college directly to work for Dell Technologies, which is now Dell Technologies. And I was there for about 16 years, I want to say. And I built a career there. And that's where like the tech background comes from, largely in what we call services over there, but all in support services. I was in field services for a little bit and then ended up in supply chain logistics and services marketing. So it was like a very wild, hopping journey where I built a lot of partnership skills, right? Everything that I did the entire time was B2B, but also learning a lot about how inventory works, like supply and demand, which was highly applicable to my next role, which was at Whole Foods. I was working actually on an inventory management system there, and then I got recruited out of there into Vrbo. So I was actually working in Vrbo. So I've been there for almost 5 years now. Also in a B2B focused area, working on their software partnerships. And then from there, I actually somehow, this is actually a really good story about how this happened. Maybe we can get into it. But I ended up moving from the operations side into the marketing side of the house. And so now I lead the marketing organization that markets to those software partners, as well as the sports sponsorships side of the house. And yeah, so that's about my history. But I'll say, like, when people say that career pathing is not linear, it's a very good example of how it's not linear. There was a lot of experience building, jumping, and most importantly, leveraging my sponsors throughout that time.
And sometimes you don't expect those opportunities. You know, you just need to be prepared. There is something that's all right. I'm going to take what you just said because I think it's crucial for something that at least I think is the biggest responsibility that we have being here, which is there are a lot of pressure from especially young people in order to develop a career, and there are a lot of comparison. There are a lot of things that we want to get there. We want to, you know, it's heavy. Especially when you are people manager, you have your team in the same path. You know, we want to, but it's not a path; it's a journey. And something that for me was key in terms of career development and how I got here in the US was to prepare myself from where the opportunity presents, focusing on a long term. I didn't know that I wanted to, and just to give you a super quick path or how was my journey, I started with a radio program. I started creating products for radio. Actually, I worked in radio many years. And then I realized that there was a really big gap in terms of how you present, how you produce the right communication for a product. So we start this, and this is late 90s, a company, with the web pages and that kind of things. And then I figured out that the problem is not the tech, it's how you frame that in a business environment. So I started working with a lot of companies, just focusing on that until Verizon took me for something that was internal, actually. And Saver, the same thing with Travelocity to develop Travelocity in Latin America, and then I came to Expedia. But every time that I moved from one company to the other, I identified the gap that I had. I felt that I was not perfect in one thing. I knew a lot of things. So, and that never makes me feel comfortable. But until I start considering that, okay, I want to understand how the business works. Let's just start focusing on that. And I start talking with people, having mentors. I have a lot of mentors. I can name a lot of people that were crucial in my career. I wouldn't be here without their help. And they always give something that I say, okay, I will take that in consideration and could build my career. So the path the journey that brought me here, I'm from Argentina. I came in 2019 to take care of Latin America for Expedia. Then now I cover all Americas. But the concept was always the same. It's what is going to happen next. How can all these dots can be connected using actually the energy of our team. Our teams knows a lot of things that are happening, and when we listen to them and we listen what the business needs, and we can just create that synergy between teams, the objective of the company, and what the market is looking for, it's just something that happens, a consequence. I do believe in this. It's not easy. It's not short term. It's a long shot. And that is something that we need to respect. Things takes time. But when you have a clear idea where you want to go or when your business wants to go, the rest happen. I do believe on that. Actually, happens.
Love that. I love that, Francisco. And we have a couple of other questions here in the chat. And I'm going to start off by reading the first one or the first two. But then if people have questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask them. So the first one is from Daniela Blanco. She says, great session. How much of your work is influenced by external factors versus internal organizational factors?
Monica, would you like to start?
Oh, gosh, that's a really tough question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it might actually be 50-50, right? For as very much a push and pull. There's like everything that I do ends up being external facing. However, there are huge internal dependencies, and just like any tech company, right? What does our development roadmap look like? What's the timing? What's the product release? So anything from what type of offer that we can offer out is influenced and impacted, and sometimes at the last minute to where we have to change it, right? So I mean, it's probably about 50-50, but it's a constant push and pull. So there's constant advocacy, I'd say both ways, where I'm taking stuff from external and using it to push an agenda internally, but then also the flip happens a lot for me personally. It's probably different for Francisco, I would say.
No, the concept is the same. I mean, I have a really good balance of both. The thing is super strong. And you can imagine, I mean, we work with really dynamic markets and everything that happens in terms of politics or economics impact immediately to travel. So one of the biggest challenges that I found at the beginning was to translate that to a leadership team that they were living in places where inflation was not a thing. After 2020 was easier because everyone understood what was the impact on that, but at the beginning was really hard to explain that. So external factors are key in order to always have a plan B. And that is something that actually we were talking about this before this meeting. We tend to think on the main objective that we want to achieve and contingencies, and then develop plan B and plan C in case something happened. So I think that is very because a big influence on the external. And as Monica said, once you have that, you need to turn inside and say, hey, I want to do this. Sometimes it's not sometimes, and most of the time, it's not in the box. We need to think about or burn the box and start all over again. And Expedia give us the time for that. And then you changed. You keep the same concept in terms of having a plan A, B, C, but you change again the communication, how you influence, how are the assumptions that you are taking in consideration, because it's a different way of explain things. So as Monica, both has a really big influence in our work life.
I see a hand raised by Juan, but I do want to get to one other question that's in the chat, and then we'll go to Juan Yanez. Vivian in the chat says, could you give a specific example or case study of working in a multicultural environment and a big lesson you dealt with or were surprised to learn early on in your career? And then that's the last question in the chat right now, and then we'll go to all live questions after that.
Okay, Monica?
I'll let you start with this one, actually.
Okay, I have this one. 2012, I was in South Lake at Travelocity presenting the example of the project to develop Travelocity in Argentina, Mexico, and Latin America. And of course, one of the key factors of this project was to implement for the first time installment. That is to allow travelers to buy a booking in different payments per month with no interest. But that time, the economy in Argentina was different, and the company that was leading actually still leading the segment was where they were offering 50 installment with no interest. I know it sounds crazy now, but by that time, it was financially feasible. So I was explaining all this project, and someone, an SVP, actually said to me, are you trying to convince us to implement those ridiculous 50 installments? So how do you answer that when you understand that there's something that I was not explaining properly? So I had to change the approach, saying, okay, I got it. Let's just answer this question. How many credit cards do you have? And this person took his wallet and said, I had 3. Okay, that for me is crazy. Because in Argentina, having more than one credit card implies a lot of interest, and I'm not going to risk. So we go to installment, not credit card. That is the e-commerce diversity that we need to aim to. Issue solved. So sometimes we take, and I'm going to be super open, and everyone knows me. When I got that answer, I felt, oh, what are you saying? They say, no, it's not in a bad way. This person is trying to understand why this is happening. So since then, I start doing that kind of, again, pivot in terms of how I need to change or adapt what I'm trying to explain in terms of the cultural background that the person that is listening to me have or brings to the conversation. I have others, but I hope this one answers your question. If not, happy to follow it up.
Thank you, Francisco.
I'll give a very kind of different but short answer to that as well. So another facet of my role that I actually just ended. So within Expedia, this is actually super interesting with our IBGs, and other companies are called ERGs. We're actually elected to hold an office. So like there's a president, vice president, etc. And for the last 4 years, I served on the board. I started as the events lead, where Melissa is now. Welcome. And then for the last 2 years was the vice president. And as part of the role in vice president, we actually did a lot of work to drive strategy. And as a leader of the Latino IBG in there, I actually did a lot of work in business casing to try and get us sponsorships, which we never had, like this one, like HITEC, for example. So it actually took some research and grabbing numbers from different organizations like HITEC and the Hispanic Star to actually get numbers and present a business case essentially about, hey, this is a market that we're missing. If we're looking at the employment numbers between different companies nationally, like actually kind of creating a competitive analysis and presenting a case to our sponsors to attain dollars and funds to do this. And it's not really like business directive, but it is something internally that I was able to do and had like the clouts to be able to do internally. But it did take a lot of discussion and kind of like, I'm trying to think of a not crass word for it, courage, to go up to like the president of our division, who, by the way, is now the CEO of our company and coming in May, and present these business cases, secure funds to do this, and being told yes. So I mean, that took encouragement. It took kind of a couple of different muscles. Like if me 20 years ago was doing that, there would be no way, right? So it's just an experience that I had to build up upon over time, and use some business knowledge to do it. It was cool.
I love that. Thank you, Monica and Francisco, for sharing. There's a question from Juan.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for having us. This is one of my first HITEC events, and I think this is great. So, I look forward to continuing, the interactions and being part of this, community to maybe find mentorship or sponsors in the future. Who knows? Anyway, just wanted to say hi. Thank you for having me. I'm from Venezuela. I'm here at the IBM offices. I just started as a product manager, a couple of months ago. So I'm very excited role, very excited opportunity for me. And I guess the question I wanted to ask you guys, Francisco and Monica, and thank you for your time too, obviously, is mostly about when you're working in products that you have to deliver to clients, how do you keep in mind always like the big picture and like understanding like where this product is going, and not just like, keeping your head down and just focusing on your deliverable? Because sometimes that's happened to me that, I got to finish this PowerPoint, or I need to finish this deck or put this prototype together. But like, I guess this is more of a advice and career advice kind of thing. But how do you keep in mind that big picture and apply that in your daily tasks that you do at your job?
Monica, would you like to?
Yeah, so I would say that I never really got great at that until I joined Expedia. So we as a culture are very outcome driven. We're very goals driven, and every quarter we actually it starts at the year, like annually we plan out what are our top line business goals, like what is Expedia's goals, and then what's E for B or Expedia for Business's goals, and then going down to it, what are E for B2B marketing's goals, right? So we map everything back up to the bigger picture. And we are a relatively lean organization, so we make sure that all of our resources are focused on something that is very outcome driven. So that includes, even to the level of the sports sponsorships, for example, how does that deliver value back to the business? Traveler benefits. So in the start of every single one of our offers, I always make sure to tie back to each one of these goals and answer that question specifically. How is this tying back for Expedia for Business? How is this tying back to B2B goals? How am I delivering traveler value? And to make sure all three of those answers are there, right? So that's like step one. But then step two, you get into the, hey, how am I creating all of these decks every day? Honestly, the way that we drive our outcomes, we're checking back on this constantly. So I probably have to revisit everything monthly or less, like just to keep myself on track, honestly. So there is a lot of going back and saying like, hey, are we doing this? Are we reporting back? Am I delivering these traveler facing goals? And making sure that I'm able to, throughout all of the work, actually weave that narrative through. And maybe that's a very marketing answer, but it is that's basically how we have to operate to make sure that we're keeping on track for that. At least in my org, that's how I got to work.
In my case, hello, Juan. Thank you for the question. Actually, it's a very good one. In my case, I focused on have a proper design of the problem. We tend to focus on solutions always, just to fix things, solve things. But if we don't spend proper time to understand what we are trying to solve, what we are trying to achieve, what is actually the reason of our existence in this company, in specific process, we can lose the horizon super easily. So, and that is something that, at least in my case, I try to do it every time that I have a project or a challenge or something that came up, something of every single day that, hey, this is new, some country changed the law, oh, we need to do this and that. We confirm that we are all on the same page and we understand what we want to solve. Once that is done, and this is personal, I write it down and just put it as a post-it in the wall or someplace, because I know that my team or myself, we're going to start, trying or thinking on different solutions, and when maybe we are going to come up with an amazing, solution that has nothing to do with what we're trying to solve. even in that journey, we lose track of, okay, what are we doing? Oh, let's come back. So it's to have to force the simplicity on understanding what we want to learn, what we want to solve, and write that down. It's amazing how that changed and give you clarity on, no, we're not going on that road, let's just change or let's start over again. So that is my humble recommendation. I'm not the most organized person, I must say that, but this helped me a lot just to be sure that, I'm still on the goals. And the other thing is, sometimes you need to give time to things happen in order to give you more information. I mean, we need to keep that flexible muscle that we can change. It's like skiing. I mean, if you are going to super rigid skiing, you're going to fail. We need to, understand that there are things happening and listen and being sure that we are reading that post-it that we wrote at the beginning is, for me, critical.
Yeah, and I'm sitting here laughing because right before everybody joined, Francisco and I were sitting here like comparing notes on our post-it.
Come on. The kitchen of this, yeah.
Yes.
Juan, did we answer your question?
Yeah, no, this is great advice from both of you. I'm trying the writing it down things and having on paper is useful, but I think I'm gonna put it up next to my computer or something and just have it there as a reminder. I think it's really great. So yeah, appreciate it so much.
You're welcome.
Roylene, do we have any additional questions?
We do not have any additional questions. If anyone else wants to ask something, raise their hand, or even make a comment, you are more than welcome to do so right now. But no, we don't. We do have a survey link, though, that I will go ahead and send in the chat. And we would love if you guys can take a few seconds. It'll take no longer than 3 to 5 seconds, I promise. Go ahead and give us your feedback and let us know what you think. And then also any other topics that you would like to share with us in the future. We would really appreciate that.
Awesome. Thanks, Roy. I guess before we end, because we still have a little bit of time, Monica, Francisco, any closing thoughts? Any additional things you'd like to add?
Monica?
No, thank you all for being here. I think it's really exciting to be able to share our knowledge and our histories with everybody and make some new connections. As I kind of said earlier, the network and the sponsors are actually hugely important. So it's really great to connect with other people and figure out how we can help others on their career path. So I'm happy to be able to talk to everybody today.
Yeah, plus one. I thank you for the invitation and to give us the chance to share our experience. And that's all. Thank you very much for this time.
Great, appreciate it. So Monica and Francisco, thank you. Expedia Group, thank you so much for sponsoring this session. I want to thank everybody who joined us today. I hope that you found something of value. I hope that that this was an engaging and inspiring conversation. If you want to, if you or anybody within your company would like access to this conversation that we had today, it will be posted on our YouTube channel very shortly. As Roylene commented, we're always looking for feedback. So after every one of these sessions, we have a very, very short, I promise you, 2-question survey. We want to hear how you think we did, and we want your ideas on how you think we can make these sessions better and more engaging. But more than anything, and I just see Roylene posted that survey in the chat, so please do take a second and click on that and respond. If not, we'll see you at our next HITEC Live. Thank you so much, Francisco, Monica, Expedia Group, and everyone who joined us today.
In our direction of travel. Once they get by us, we'll be on our way in our next scheduled station.
Bye, everybody.
Once again, we're just waiting on a train. It's actually Amtrak train number 335 as they make their way to Milwaukee.